Episode 119 of 5 Drinks Every Night. On the show, we bring the questions, guests bring the drinks, we try to wrap up before midnight. Today, we're going back into Brooklyn. We're going to Travel Bar to talk to Simon Brooking, Senior Ambassador of Scotch Heritage at Beam Suntory. But before we do, like and subscribe, hit the bells, the whistles, leave a comment if you like what we're doing. All right, let's get started. Simon, thank you so much for joining us. 5 drinks for midnight, 5 drinks, 5 questions, midnight, whatever comes first. Thanks so much for joining me at Travel Bar. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. I guess first question is, what are we drinking first?
We're drinking a Don Lockwood
Excellent.
cocktail. This is a Bowmore 12-year with Maker's Mark, chocolate bitters, and it's a fantastic cocktail. A half step in Austin, Texas.
Okay.
Great bar. And my good friend Rashidi there is one of our protectors of the peat.
Okay.
So Don Lockwood, I don't know if you know, he's the Gene Kelly's character in Singing in the Rain.
Okay.
I'm singing in the rain.
And Scotland being as rainy as wet as it is, we are singing in the
They're
rain.
always singing.
We're always singing in the rain. It keeps us going this way. So.
Well, awesome. Cheers.
All right. Cheers.
Damn good cocktail, Mike. I guess question one, it's always the same. It's a little bit of an origin story. But how does a guy that was going to go into theater end up in the whiskey business?
The whiskey business is theater.
Okay.
It is theater. But historically, I had come to New York to pursue a career in theater. And I got some side jobs along the side, and this was 27 years ago now.
Okay.
I had a whole other career before this career, and my agent sent me out for an interview, an audition for Dewars.
Okay.
They were looking for an ambassador to do an industrial down in the warehouse down in Chelsea.
Okay.
And there was 10 bars, 100 guests, 10 horseshoe-shaped bars, a bartender at each bar, and they would have the evening started with a Jewish comedian.
Okay.
And then I would come in as the expert.
Okay.
But I drank a lot of whiskey, but I didn't really know the industry itself. And so I got hired, and they sent me back to Scotland, and I trained with a master blender.
Okay.
And learned all about whiskey production at that very start. And from there, I just continued to work within the New York area, eventually becoming a regional ambassador and then becoming a national ambassador. So it just kept growing as the Scotch industry kept growing at that time, and the ambassador positions. I worked for Diageo, was part of the original ambassador series that the regionality of single malt scotches. So
Okay.
I worked with the distillery managers and some of the best in the business from the Diageo perspective, and then I came over to Jim Beam. Jim Beam had one little distillery, the Dalmore,
Yeah.
beautiful little distillery from the Highlands of Scotland, and at that time, then they got the Lafroig and Ardmore distilleries and Teachers. So I grew my portfolio from the one distillery to 3 distilleries, and then Beam was purchased by Suntory.
Okay.
And that's when I took on Auchentoshan and Bowmore and Glengarry.
Oh, nice.
So I represent 5 distilleries for the Beam Suntory scotches.
Very nice. Where you said like Dewar's was kind of like the first kind of into ambassadorship. Was that your drink of choice back then in the day, or what were you drinking way back?
I was mostly drinking beer.
Beers, okay.
Yeah. And a little bit of tequila every
Okay.
once in a while.
All right.
But in that kind of that classic college days tequila style. I drank Scotch. I was not a bourbon drinker.
Okay.
Bourbon was not a drink of choice, and I think that comes from the palate. I find that a lot of people will gravitate towards the grain, the majority of the grain that is primary within their palate, within their diet. The Americans, there's a lot of corn in the diet, so there's a natural tendency to move towards the corn-based spirits, whereas the barley is a bigger part of the European diet. So people gravitate more towards the malted barley spirits. I think it's easier to move from bourbon to Scotch than Scotch
to bourbon. That was going to be my question, because I have a lot of friends that come over from Ireland and they'll switch right up to like bourbon and to be right in there, and they'll be like all into drinking bourbon. But that's where the kind of follow-up question was, did you switch to bourbon? But obviously it's a lot harder for a Scotch man to drink over to a bourbon side.
I think if I'm gonna drink an American whiskey, it's usually gonna be a rye.
Okay.
And the spiciness of the rye, for me,
fits better.
It fits better. It's a more natural fit for me.
Okay.
And we've got some great ryes with Beam.
Yep.
The Basil Hayden and Old Overall.
Rolled over. It's one that's one of my favorites. It's that it holds a special place in my heart. That's what my granddad drank, and that's what I drank because of him. So that is always.
And I think those Scottish Irish roots run deep in Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, and as we're enjoying this cocktail, in terms of origins, this is a Bowmore 12-year. And this 12-year really typifies, it's a classic Islay, mid-island style. The Bowmore is more of a medium peated Islay whiskey. It's the oldest licensed distillery on the island, it's 1779.
Okay.
Second oldest licensed distillery in Scotland. So the heritage, the provenance that we have with Bowmore is a great story and a great liquid. It's a great introduction to the Islay style of whiskies, because I think a lot of people they see Islay whiskey and they think Laphroaig 10 years.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's gonna blow my head off.
Yeah. Yep.
Bowmore, there's something for everybody on the island as well as at each distillery. There's variations. The Bowmore 12-year is 12 years in a combination of bourbon and sherry casks. So it's 90% bourbon casks and 10% sherry. So basically for every 9 bourbon barrels, we're gonna add 1 sherry butt to that, marry that, and then bottle. So it's not as big as smoky as you're gonna find with the Laphroaig. Plus, in terms of the phenolics, that smoky quality that you get, whereas Laphroaig is at around 39 parts per million.
Okay.
Bowmore is around 22 parts per million.
Okay, so a little softer.
So a little softer. Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's awesome. It works wonderful in the drink, so it's...
Yeah. Well, and Scotch cocktails, people are, what?
Yeah.
You can't add anything to my Scotch. That's going to foul it up. But Scotch became popular as a cocktail in the late 19th century. That was when the drink of choice was brandy and soda.
Okay.
But the phylloxera plague, this beetle wipes out all the vineyards of France, so there's no grapes available, so there's no brandy available. So that's when Scotch and soda became the drink of fashion.
Okay.
And because the British Empire stretched throughout the world, that's when Scotch really took off. So we, if it wasn't for that beetle, we'd be drinking brandy right now, and I'd much rather be drinking
Scotch. That's amazing. So again, love the origin story, and this is absolutely freaking amazing.
Yeah,
So cheers. Question 2, drink 2. What are we drinking?
We are drinking Ardmore from the Highlands of Scotland. This is Single Cask Nation, our good friends Joshua and Jason from Single Cask Nation. This is a 10-year-old Ardmore, single cask. Our good friend Anthony picked out the cask. I wanted to do a single cask offering, and the boys at Single Cask Nation are really one of the top in the business.
Okay.
That we've had a lot of connections with through the years. They were part of what was the Isla swim, the Great Isla swim, where we had 3 lads swim around the island of Isla.
Oh wow!
Collecting whiskey from each distillery.
And they swam?
They swam.
Oh wow!
And they were on Joshua and the team were on land. They were the ones that were actually visiting the distilleries, while the boys did all the hard work in the waters off the island. But Ardmore has a special place in my heart because it really is one of the keys for teachers, Highland blended Scotch whiskey. It's a peated Highland whiskey.
Okay.
So Bowmore obviously is an Isla peated, but there are peated whiskies on the mainland of Scotland as well. But the peat from the Highlands of Scotland is more decomposed pine trees.
Okay.
Versus the peat from the from Isla is more decomposed seaweed.
Okay.
So I like to compare, it's like the difference between sitting around a campfire in the forest versus sitting around a bonfire on the beach.
Okay.
This is the Highland peat.
Cheers.
So here's a toast. My heart's in the Heelands, my heart is not here. My heart's in the Heelands, chasing the deer, chasing the wild deer, following the roe. My heart's in the Heelands, wherever I go. To the Heelands.
Cheers! That's so fucking awesome. Thank you so much.
Ardmore is really a fantastic whiskey, but you don't see a lot of it because it is the workhorse for teachers. 99.99% of it is going to blended to the blend of teachers. When Jim Beam purchased from Allied Domecq, Lafroig, and teachers, they got the Ardmore distillery. And so Ardmore had not produced and bottled an official bottling at that time. So that was when Beam, and they were only at 60% capacity. So Beam ramped up production capacity, and because of that they then started releasing what was called traditional cask, which was the first commercial release of Ardmore, and is in terms of the peat, we were talking before about Lafroig at 39, Bowmore's at 22. This is at about 15 parts per million.
Okay.
So the smoke is there, but it's not. It doesn't lead with the smoke.
Yeah.
And Ardmore means great place or high place. It's one of the highest distilleries in Scotland. It's also along the railway line between Aberdeen and Glasgow. This is a great example of when whiskey became popular in the 19th century. It became popular because the route to market was a lot easier because the railways had built in. Prior to this, the waterways were the highways of the day, and so that's why distilleries like Bowmore and Lafroig were popular, because Isla was actually easier to access via waterways. Okay. But then the railways came in and the roads got better, and that's why the likes of Ardmore and Glenlivet was a big one as well, because like Ardmore, they had the railways built right up to the steps of the distillery. And it really led to the first big boom for Scotch whisky production after the legalization of whiskey in 1823, the Excise Act. And so the roads got better, the mode of transportation got better, and that's when whiskey really started taking off. And the size of production as well went from small stills that were the size of your chair to 1,000 gallon stills.
Oh, wow.
That was a big shift in the industry and the business.
Wow. All right, so question 2, I have to read this because it's a quote I want by you, and I want to make sure I get it right. So, Scottish whiskey is not just another beverage, it's crafted with passion by a passionate group of people for an equally passionate group of followers. I love talking about Scotland, where I come from, the land, the heritage, and the people. So, question 2 is, what do you feel is the biggest misconception about Scotch whiskey? We talked a little bit about it in question 1, where you're like, don't put my Scotch in a cocktail because you're going to fill up my Scotch. What do you think is the biggest misconception about Scotch?
That it burns.
That it burns.
Well, because for me, with all the years I've been in the industry and as much travel as I've done, 90% of America broke into their father's liquor cabinet when they were 12, drank a bottle of Scotch and swore never to touch it ever again.
Yep.
And so part of my job is showing people that whiskey, single malt Scotch. When I say whiskey, I usually mean single malt Scotch.
Gotcha.
That whiskey is approachable, it's versatile. It has a lot of depth, a lot of personality. That I always say there's a Scotch for everyone. But a lot of times it depends on the delivery method.
Okay.
Because I think for too many years it's been too precious. That there's only one way of drinking it.
Yep.
And it freaks people out. I mean, they don't want to do it because they're afraid they're going to do it the wrong way, or to even start with, that they're going to say it the wrong way. It's a lot of Gaelic names, and people are intimidated by it, like Lafro.
Yeah. There's been a lot of weird mispronunciations.
Alcantarshan,
Yeah.
Oh, I'll have Macallan.
Because
I can say that.
Yeah, you can say that one. Yeah, doers. It's super easy. Yeah.
And so it's, for me, it's showing that it's a very approachable, very accessible, and that really speaks to the people of Scotland as well, who will literally open their doors and with a dram in hand, welcome you into their homes and your lifelong friends. So a lot of it, as I was saying, the delivery system, and it's the likes of having a well-educated bartender who will say, who has information and is able to educate the people on the stories of the distilleries, as well as how to enjoy it. Neat, on the rocks, splash of water, cocktail.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I'd like to start with a cocktail, because it eases people into the category. They think, oh, I'm not supposed to have it as a cocktail, but no, you can. You drink it the way you like it. Water on the side, splash of water, although I always like to recommend neat first and then add water to it, because a lot of times there's a knee-jerk reaction of just add water to it, that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yep.
But so many of these whiskeys take water differently, and they take water differently for each of us. So it's really a matter of personal preference. And a lot of times, depending on people's experiences, past experiences
Sure.
with it, I might start off with a lot of water added to it. Find those basic flavors that are in the whiskey, and then maybe start easing off on the water, and then finding more of the flavors. But it's that burn that I want to dispel. There's warmth, there's
Sure.
heat, and there's a reason for it, because it's cold and damp and rainy in Scotland.
Yeah.
So, so you want to take the chill out of your bones, and so it is more seasonal in that aspect.
Okay.
So understanding when's the best time to drink it, although as we had with our first cocktail, that expands the possibilities of the seasons. One of our favorites within our group is a pina colada.
Okay. Very nice.
Just swap out your base spirit with a Scotch, and those tropical flavors that you find, that you do find in single malt Scotches, marry beautifully with the classic pina colada recipe.
Okay.
Just using Scotch.
All right. Fuck, that sounds amazing. We're gonna have to try that. I totally agree with you. I think that having a knowledgeable bartender, Mike here, again, I'm not a big peated guy, but I've been trying to expand my horizons and my taste buds. But Mike is always just going to be like, here, try this, you might like this. I think that is absolutely, I totally agree with you. That is a key point there. If you were going to try a new whiskey or a new Scotch for the first time, what is your method of tasting? Like how do you go about
I'm gonna take my time with it.
Okay.
And that's one of the other things. People, they just shoot it right back. Take some time with it, nose it. My good friend Richard Patterson, who is with the Dalmore. His classic is,
hello.
Hello. How are you?
Yep.
Very nice to good to meet you. There's such a hurry for people these days to get through the experience and move on to the next.
Okay.
It's like, slow it down. This Ardmore here is 10 years. I ask you take more than 10 seconds to enjoy it.
Yes, absolutely.
And during that time, you're making new friends, you're reacquainting with old. It's about the spirit within the spirit. So it really is, take your time with it. And if a lot of times people will speak very eloquently and maybe exaggeratingly about the flavor profile, and that can be intimidating. They're like, oh, there's ripe mangoes. I was at a tasting where the presenter was like, oh, this is like my grandmother's leather Bible on a Sunday afternoon in the sunlight on a pew, and I look out to the room and people are.
What does your grandma smell like?
All I smell is whiskey. And I don't want people to be intimidated by that. So, but if you're interested in exploring the different flavors, I would say take whiskey notes and then take those examples and try a Seville orange and then taste the whiskey if it's saying that it's got those Seville orange notes. Almonds, salted almonds, taste an salted almond and then taste the whiskey and see if you can find those flavors in it. If you don't, that's okay, but it gives you the opportunity to open your mind to the possibilities and the versatility that each of these whiskeys represent, and it's about being an explorer with your whiskey.
Okay. All right. Question 3, drink 3. What are we drinking?
We're moving from the Highlands of Scotland to the Highlands of Jalisco.
All right. This was a total unexpected twist for the tasting that I thought we were going to have today. So I'm really looking forward to this.
I thought that this is just come in. It's really kind of special. It's something that I'm very passionate about because the Camarena family, who owns and runs El Tesoro, are an amazing family that are really kind of typify what's happening in Mexico, but also the passion of spirits producers across the world, and it kind of reminds me of what's going on in Scotland.
Okay.
This is an El Tesoro Añejo this is the second bottling. The first one was 9 months in bourbon casks, and then an additional 3 months in Lafroig used casks.
Okay.
This is the second bottling of it. This is a full year in Lafroig casks. So,
cheers.
Here's the toast. Saluda, dinero, amor y el tiempo para conquistar todo.
Which is?
I have no idea.
All right.
No, health, wealth, love, and the time to conquer all.
All right, excellent.
Salud.
Oh wow. Now you said that this is just out, or is?
This has just been released, a very limited release in key markets across the United States. What I love about this is we did a release of this, with the first release, and we had a lot of writers who come in for the release. And one thing that they were saying, that this is not a mezcal. People are thinking that a tequila that's been aged in a smoky cask is going to end up tasting like a mezcal. But this is just got it's its own unique flavor.
Yeah.
There's fruit to this.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's very fruity.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
But there's smoke. The smoke is there, and a little bit of a saltiness, which is so indicative of that maritime style. The salt comes much later in the finish.
That is so nice. Mm. Wow. All right. So question 3 comes from my friend Diana, who introduced us at a whiskey festival. She absolutely loves you. She has multiple questions of part 3. So question 3 is really one is, how do you find the energy to keep going through and keep doing whiskey fests? Because your charisma is so contagious that she just absolutely loves talking to you, and she's like, when people find out that you're at a whiskey fest, they just flock to your booth. So question 3A is, how do you find the energy to keep coming and just keep performing and doing the whiskey fest?
It's the people that give me the energy.
Okay.
I feed off the people.
Excellent.
I mean, there are those that'll come up to the table like, what's the oldest you got?
Yeah.
You know, okay, fine. Okay, enough.
Yeah.
You know, I want to teach people about Scotch, about these distilleries. I want to give them the experience that I have received from the people at the distilleries that produce these, the blenders, the stillmen, the maltmen, the folks who work in the office. I mean, it's such a key part of the flavor of the whiskeys, and is the personality of the whiskey, is the personality of the distillery. And the fact that they're working so hard to make the whiskey, to send it over to us, I mean, I should at least do half as much as what they're doing. Because I'm standing behind the table. But if people want to learn, I want to teach.
Right.
I want to talk. I want to relate my experience in this industry. I get to talk about Scotland. I get to talk about where where I was born.
Yeah.
And it's something that I like. I'll feed off. If I get a couple who comes up, we've never tasted Scotch before. Come on in, let's do that.
Yeah.
Welcome. And there may be a line at the table of 10, 12 back. Screw it.
Yeah.
I'm going to take this time with these people, because if this is their first time tasting these whiskeys, I want them to get the best experience possible. And if that means for the sake of other folks having to wait, that's fine, you know, because it's important that they get a good first experience.
Absolutely.
And I'll do that with a lot of my events. I'll always talk about the basics, because I feel like there's always someone in the room who is there for the first time. And my job as ambassador is, honestly, it's to sell the brand.
Right.
Who we fooling. But that always has to come down to a good first experience.
Okay.
And we get people like, as a result, they end up going to Scotland.
Yeah.
And when I get somebody who's like, I was at your event, and because of this, I'm now going to Scotland, and I'm going to visit the distilleries. And you get somebody who not only has tasted it in the US, but then they go to Scotland, they go to Islay, they make that trip. It's like Mecca, and you've got a fan for life.
Well, that's my friend Diana. So this, AKA the Scotch Mother. I mean, you have changed her life drastically. So like you are her superhero, her Buddha, her God, if you will. But yeah, like you have definitely changed her life. So
I'm a simple man with simple tastes, but I have found a job that certainly has a lot of people envy. It's still a job, and it requires a lot of hours. But I mean, there are worse jobs to have. But I certainly am feel very lucky and fortunate that I fell into this position, stumbled into this position, and have been able to make it a third career for me, and just happy to turn people on to Scotch.
Excellent. Again, there are tons of Whiskey Fests. I mean, I think we're just kind of getting out of the Whiskey Fest season, but do you have a favorite fest that you like to, like, is the Vegas or the here in New York, or like the Whiskey Live London? Or
honestly, the bigger Whiskey Fests, I'm not a big fan of, just because of just the numbers. I've through the years, one of my favorites is some of the Highland Games are really fun. New Hampshire Highland Games I do up in the White Mountains.
Nice.
And that is, I'll do 5 tastings, 160 people at each tasting over a 24-hour period. Plus we then also do bottle signings and tastings at the local liquor store. So, you know, the motto for New Hampshire is drink whiskey or die. People embrace Scotland, they embrace the Scotch, and they just have a great experience. One of my other favorites is up in Canada, the Victoria Whiskey Festival on Vancouver Island. It's a great one. I did one in Portland, Oregon one year, which was not only did they do whiskey tastings, but there were vendors, there were pig races. I mean, it was a whole experience. Sometimes when it's all about whiskey, there's a lot of pressure on the whiskey to perform. You know, and I see it at these big whiskey fests where the VIP, they open the doors and the people are sprinting to
just cork dorks trying to get the highest fruit or the oldest bottle and whatever.
Exactly.
Paying the extra $45 or $100 just to be a VIP and taste whatever's under the table.
Well, one of the things I'd like to do is do a tasting at one of these big events where first half of the event, all the bottles are generic. They're blacked out. You don't know what you're tasting. And then the second half of the tasting, the second half of the evening, you reveal.
That's actually pretty smart. I've done a few blind tastings, and people, it's funny what people usually like when they don't see a label or a number. So like that is...
Yeah, I did a tasting at Lafroig at the distillery, one of the festivals, the Isla Whiskey Festival one year, where we did a blind tasting, and it was literally blind. People were blindfolded. They had to feel to find the glass.
Oh wow!
So and then taste the whiskey that way. So it was a
full sensory,
to just remove all of it was just down to the taste itself.
Wow!
And the nose. So they couldn't see the liquid at all, and it produced some really interesting results. It was a little tricky at first. It took a while for them to settle into being having all those senses removed, but eventually it became a great experience for people and eye-opening. To be blindfolded that way.
They say that, you know, you lose one sense and all the others kind of magnify. So and then so 3C. Do you have any weird stories that you could share with us from Whiskey Festival. So question 3 is usually we call it our talking shit segment, which is either a negative or a positive. But do you have anything that is any weird stories about people coming up to the booth at all that you could share with us?
Well, I had a couple who so at Lafroig we talk about Donald and Alexander Johnson, who were the brothers who started the Lafroig distillery, and Donald in the early 1800s fell into a vat of pot ale at the distillery and succumbed to his injuries.
Okay.
But it was actually very common for people to die this way at the distilleries. I was doing a whiskey event up in Massachusetts at Julio's.
Okay.
Great store. Ryan Maloney does a big whiskey weekend. But I had a couple from Massachusetts who came up to my table and they said, we have a relative from Lafroig distillery and we have the death certificate for this relative, and they fell into a vat of burnt pot ale at the distillery. They as well were succumbed to this this fatality, and so I have a copy of that. The death certificate.
I don't mean to laugh. I mean that
no,
someone lost their life. That's a sad thing, but it's just
the fact that they were able
to bring you the death certificate.
I mean, it's a cold hard reality. It's not easy work at the distillery. It is easier today, but certainly it shows the commitment that we've had at these distilleries historically. That people have committed their lives to these distilleries. It's a great job on Islay. There's not a lot of jobs on the island, and you get the boys, the men, and the women. Now we have 2 women who are working in production at Lafroig, we're drinking El Tesoro, which is Carlos Camarena, but his sister Jenny Camarena is also part of the Camarena family. You get a job at Lafroig, at Beaumont. It's a job for life if you want it to be. It's a good working job, and it's a steady income because Scotch is doing as well as it's doing today. And I don't think it's going to change. I don't think it's going to. It's ebbed and flowed through the years, but I think it's going to be consistent from now on, just because people around the world have discovered single malt Scotch and tequila.
Yeah. This is just wow. I was blown away. So
yeah.
Well, that's question 3. All 4 parts of it. So there we go.
Salud.
Question 4, drink 4. What are we drinking?
We are drinking Lafroig Lore.
Okay.
And that's not Data's brother.
Finding it difficult to maintain focus. Not your focus, brother. Your existence. I'm consuming you.
Very nice, deep reference. There we go. That's
no, Lore, on the bottle of Lafroig it says the richest of all Scotch whiskies. And our distillery manager, our good friend John Campbell, who's now at Lochleat, when we were looking to produce this, somebody had said to him, well, what does that really mean? Is that just bullshit? Come on, is that just marketing bullshit? The richest of... So it got him thinking about what are the rich flavors that make up Lafroig.
okay.
And he took the different casks and figured out there were five basic flavors that make up the rich flavors of Lafroig. Smoky peaty, no shit, John. Dry, floral, sweet, and spice.
Okay.
So he decided to create a bottling that he wanted to call the richest of the rich. And so he experimented with different casks to pull those different flavors out, and that's what we came up with Laphroaig Lore, which is 6 different casks. It's 8-year bourbon cask to give you smoky peaty, 9-year quarter casks, and that's aged fully in the quarter cask, which are 125 litre casks, to give you dry. 10-year Oloroso sherry casks to give you fruit, spicy sweetness. 11-year New European oak to give you floral. 15 and 21-year bourbon casks to give you the sweet, but those are not only floral, but the 21-year start to move into tropical notes with the floral notes. So they are. This is a tribute to John Campbell. This is one of his bottlings, and really a treat for non-Laphroaig drinkers as well as Laphroaig drinkers, because this is not your typical hit over the head by a flaming log kind of experience.
Okay.
There's some subtleties to it. There's some smokiness, but I like to call this is dank whiskey.
Okay. Dank.
Dank.
All right.
And a toast.
Oh, please.
So there are these big hairy beasts that run about the island of Islay with horns. You know what we call them? It's not the English. It's a coo.
Okay.
A hairy coo.
Okay.
A Scottish coo. So this is one of John Campbell's toasts. It goes like this: On yonder hill, there stood a coo. It's not there new. It must have moved. Cheers.
Cheers. You get that fruit right up front, and then you get a little bit of that, the peaty and the smoke at the end.
Yeah. This is, to me, this experience is walking into Warehouse One, which is cool and damp, and the sweetness of the wood, the sherry casks. It's a contemplative whiskey.
Okay.
There are some whiskeys you like to share. I'm not going to share this whiskey. I'm going to just keep this to myself.
There we go. Well, I think that leads perfectly into question 4. So let's just say you've got 6 minutes to live. What are you grabbing to drink?
6 minutes to live. I'm going to grab the 10-year cask strength.
Okay.
Batch number 12, which is
Okay.
at 61.2% ABV. Because maybe it'll keep me alive.
Kill whatever is in.
If not, I'm going to go out really happy.
There you go.
You have what I call a Laphroaigian slip.
Okay.
You time travel.
You time travel.
Yeah, it goes back to a friend of mine had told me a story about his experience with Laphroaig. He was a photographer, and he had an assignment to shoot Peter Fonda and Bridget Fonda,
Okay.
father-daughter,
Yep.
up in Minnesota in the wintertime. And it was an outdoor shoot. They had pretty much done what they needed to do, and the father, Peter, had left for the end of the session. Well, my friend and Bridget ended up staying longer because they had a bottle of Laphroaig,
Okay.
10-year. And the last thing that my friend remembers is, the next thing my friend remembers is he wakes up the next morning totally clothed, not knowing where he's been, but somehow it involves time travel.
Okay.
The Laphroaig is a very powerful spirit.
Okay.
It takes you to places sometimes you don't want to go to, other times you do, and sometimes you don't know where you're going. But it's a very spiritual island. There are stones on the island that date back to the prehistoric days. There's an energy on the island that is palpable, that really transports you to a different era, and that's what this whiskey can do to you as well.
Well, there we go. I mean, that's a simple, easy question 4, but beautiful. Rich.
Question 4.
Yeah, there we
Lore.
go. Lore. All right. Question 5, drink 5, last drink of the night, last question. What are we drinking?
We're drinking out of the boot.
Excellent. What's in the boot?
Well, the boots are so important for Lefroy because this is how we age our whiskies. No. This is when we have friends of Lefroy from all over the world, where you own a square foot of land at the distillery. And so when you come to visit your plot, we put you in a pair of boots like these, give you a flag from your country and shove you out into the field, and you go find your plot and stake your claim to your clan in the country. And we have people come from all over the world to visit their square foot of land and meet the people at Lefroy. And I always bring something. I always carry my boots everywhere. Always carry your rubbers.
Yeah, always. Never know.
You never know. So and so people always say, Simon, what's in the boot?
What's in the boot?
So I brought a very special whiskey for us. This is Lefroy Carchus. Carchus is a bottling we do for the Isla Whiskey Festival, and it means friendship, hospitality. So lore, the last one we tasted was, I was going to keep to myself. This I'm going to share.
Excellent.
And this is a very special Lefroy. This is the one that really, this is when Carchus really caught fire, this bottling. This is a port finish Lefroy, 8 years bourbon, another 3 years in the port cask. And this is one that has gained cult status.
Okay.
And it just the flavors that it brings, the combination of the port cask plus the smoke and the salt and the fruit notes. This is a stellar Lefroy. And each year the Carchus bottling is a different casks, different style. We tend to do 1 year more traditional and the next year a little bit more innovative.
Okay.
Based on history, we were using whatever casks were available. I think one of the challenges today is that people are looking for new expressions. And that's a challenge for us in the distilleries because we're limited in our capabilities in terms of space. What we're producing from our stills is the same spirit. It's just how it's aged in the different types of casks that are going to give you the variance of flavors.
Okay.
We've had some singular expressions where there have been distillation differences. An example being our boiler shut down a couple of years ago, and so we were unable to finish the drying process of drying the barley over forced blown air from the stills. So we used, instead of using that, we used anthracite coal, which is what we used to use prior to the forced blown air. So we were forced to use an older method of drying the barley versus what we do today. And so that will be a bottling unto itself. Was a couple of years ago now, so it'll probably be 8 to 10 years before we actually see that expression in the market. But for the most part, where we get to play around with flavor of the casks that we use. So this Carchus is a unique bottling, and once it's a one-off. So once it's
done and gone.
It's done and gone. So if you find Carchus bottlings out there, I always say buy them because they're not coming back.
Okay.
So this is Carchus. This is one my grandfather taught me. It goes like this: "Here's to us, nae like us, God dead." And that translates to "Here's to us. There's nobody else like us. God damn, there is.
Excellent. Cheers.
Sludge.
Oh, that's nice. Oh, yeah.
And this goes back, oh, so good.
That's fantastic. Oh. That is so nice.
Yeah, the port cuts the smoke. We do another bottling with port called Brodier, which there are two different bottlings that have been done at Brodier. The first one was done for the Swedish market.
Okay.
Because the Swedes are huge fans of Lafroig. It's actually the biggest per capita consumption of Lafroig is Sweden. And that's because of our distillery manager, Ian Hunter, back in the early part of the 20th century, traveled to Sweden quite a bit and promoted it there. So we get a lot of Swedes who come to the distillery to visit and purchase a lot of Lafroig. Brodier means brother, and it was done for a bottling, they do a big whiskey fest on a ship for a weekend.
Okay.
And it was for that weekend on the ship that they produced the original Brodier. The Brodier that you see now is bottled for travel retail, duty free.
Okay.
Which I always recommend folks as they travel, please visit the travel retail stores, the duty free shops, because there are whiskies that are produced for the duty free market that you won't find anywhere else in the world. It's its own market, and although they will, if they get a good response from particular countries, they will then produce those whiskies, those bottlings for that market. For example, Lafroig Triplewood was doing really well in duty free with the U.S. customer, because they know who the customers are, because you have to give them your ticket and where you're traveling to.
Yep.
So the U.S. market was a lot of people who were flying to the U.S. were buying the Triplewood. So that became a standard bottling for us.
Okay.
In the United States. Now, with that said, we not produce Triplewood anymore, but enjoy the duty-free bottlings. And the great thing about those stores is that you can taste, you can sample in those stores. So taste it and try it before you buy it.
There you go.
And so the Carchus we release every year at the Isla Whiskey Festival, which is the end of May, beginning of June.
Okay.
The island triples in size. It goes from 3,000 people to 10,000 people. Please come and visit us. If you want more individual attention, don't come that weekend.
Don't come that weekend.
It's crazy. But if you're whiskey mad, if you have the fever, come that week and just dive in.
Excellent.
Because the water is deep and it's fine.
Awesome. Alright, so question 5 comes down to the Whiskey Wednesday coin. You can flip it, you can spin it, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to answer. The coin will give us the answer, but please feel free to answer if you want.
Okay. And this is to drinking with friends.
Exactly.
And Carchus means friendship.
That's what I was going to say. This is the perfect way to end our question 5, so it's absolutely amazing. Alright, so question 5. If you could go back in time, would you still do the same career?
Oh, and the coin is going to answer me? Right, I'm going to flip it.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep. Oh, fuck yeah! Look at that!
Yeah, of course.
Of course you would.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, Simon, that is 5 questions down, 5 drinks. Thank you so much for joining me today at Travel Bar. It was a true pleasure talking to you and getting to just experience. It was a wonderful education for me. So again, I hope we can do it again very, very soon. So thank you so much for joining us, and Swanch.
Cheers.
Cheers.